New year, same very cold fridge. And with that, welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of WWE, AEW, the NFL, and the wide world of pro wrestling and sports in general. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 76. Yes, it is the first episode of the new year. Yes, it is. Today, we got one simple thing to talk about in this first episode of the new year, and that is the 49ers. Yes, we're going to be talking some 49ers on today's show, and we're going to be talking about their game coming soon against the Houston Texans. It's the last home game of the season for the 49ers in Week 17, and there's some intrigue in this one because we don't know who's going to be starting at quarterback. Is it going to be Jimmy Garoppolo, or is it going to be Trey Lance, the rookie first-round pick from this year? So a lot of question marks in this one as the Niners take on the Houston Texans coming soon in Week 17. Obviously, before we begin, I wanted to share the social media where you can find this podcast. All the shebang and the shebang. So make sure you listen to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, and follow the show on social media on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And make sure you leave all the glowing reviews or even the bad ones of this podcast, so I can see what I like or see how I can improve on the show. So with that being said, let's talk about this upcoming game for the 49ers against the Houston Texans. And for the Texans, despite how bad this season has gone for them, they're a pretty bad team this year. First year head coach David Culley, he's a pretty old guy. I think this is his first head coaching gig, I believe, but don't quote me on that. And you got a pretty bad roster overall, and you have no Deshaun Watson, who is battling. If you remember, several months ago, almost a year ago, us talking about this tricky situation with Deshaun Watson and his sexual allegations. And yes, it was a very tricky subject. He's still in the midst of all of that. So he hasn't played all year long, and for obvious reasons. And the only positives in this Texans organization is, things we're going to get into, such as a rookie quarterback and a veteran wide receiver. I mean, heading into this game, however, from last week, in Week 16, the Texans, as you might have known by now, they actually managed to pull off an upset of sorts, despite not having a bunch of players in this game, about 20 of them, because a bunch of them were on the COVID reserve list, including their best player in Brandon Cooks. They managed to overcome a LA Chargers team that was also pretty depleted by COVID, and not only overcame them, but blew them out of the water. They pretty much whacked them. Yes, Davis Mills led this Texans team to a very big upset. They pretty much spoiled the Chargers in their chances at getting ever so close to a playoff berth. And mind you, the Texans also cost the Chargers a chance at trying to get the AFC West, because by costing the Chargers this victory, they managed to help the Chiefs clinch the AFC West. So the Texans playing the role of spoiler, even though they're well positioned to gain a top draft pick. So in this game against the Chargers, Davis Mills, the rookie quarterback, he had perhaps his best performance of the season by far, slicing and dicing the Chargers for most of the game. And the Texans defense, they typically had allowed a lot of points for most of the season, but they just kept going at Justin Herbert and this offense. They kept them in check for a lot of this game, and it resulted in a 41-29 blowout. And forget the box score, this game was a total blowout by any stretches of the mean. Meanwhile, for the 49ers, they still remain alive in the NFC wildcard race, and there's still some concerns, though. There's still some concerns with this Niners team. Not only with the fact that they lost a Thursday night contest before Christmas to the Texans' rivals, the Tennessee Titans, in a game that saw the Niners failing to take advantage of a stagnant Tennessee team that was struggling on offense for much of the first half. And they couldn't take advantage because, well, Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't move the offense. They couldn't punch in the end zone after the first touchdown. And Jimmy Garoppolo threw a blatant interception in the end zone and managed to throw another one to start the second half. And that allowed the Titans to come back alive. So not only that, he also suffered a broken thumb in that game. And that leaves his availability in doubt. But nonetheless, they're still alive in the playoff race. But questions remain about Jimmy Garoppolo. Is he going to start? Or is Trey Lance going to start in this game? And, obviously the secondary has been trash this year. And they're playing pretty badly. And the Titans, for as bad as they are on offense, they exposed the 49ers defense for what they are. So, going into this game, the Texans, let's start with them. We know the season so far for the Houston Texans. We know their story, at least, entering this 2021. They fired their former head coach and GM, Bill O'Brien. Yes, that dumbass Bill, that dumbass Bob. He was fired mid last season because, well, he was a terrible, terrible GM. He was also a mid head coach. And the thing that really triggered the firing of Bill O'Brien was trading away DeAndre Hopkins, the star wide receiver for Arizona now, for pretty much a bag of chips. Yes, pretty much a bag of chips. And then, meanwhile, entering the season, as I mentioned already, the Texans' then franchise QB Deshaun Watson was and still is facing a litany of sexual assault civil suits that have yet to be resolved, and as well as the fact that even before those came to light, Deshaun Watson was trying to trade his way out of the organization. He was trying to demand a trade, so much so that he wanted to even try to get traded to the 49ers at one point. So that was pretty much the story of the Texans heading into this 2021 season. But here we are now. Deshaun Watson is still with the Texans, and, well, he hasn't played any games for obvious reasons, like I mentioned. So under first-year head coach David Culley, who the Texans ended up hiring, Houston enters this game 4-11. No surprise, because, well, a lot of these players are under one-year rentals, and they're pretty old. A lot of these players are pretty damn old, and I guess because none of the players that are young want to play for Houston. Because of everything terrible that's happening with this organization right now. So anyway, back on topic, back on track. They sit at 4-11. They're already well eliminated from postseason consideration. But then again, they were never even had playoff hopes to begin with. And, they're currently seeded as the third overall pick in the draft this April. And, things can change from then and there. And, since they blew out the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1 to get their first win of the season, they went on a 7-game losing streak. And they themselves have been getting shellacked by allowing at least more than 20 points in each of their games. Because most of their defense can't cover for shit against quality opponents. And, even though they endured a 7-game losing streak, and after the bye week, in week 10, they actually managed to get a upset win and their second victory in week 12 against the Tennessee Titans. At the time, the Titans were pretty much looking pretty bad. They looked absolutely lost, especially on offense without Derrick Henry, who was injured and lost for the regular season at least. And then since that win, the Texans, they went, 3-3, including that win against the Titans. They lost to the Jets, the Colts, and the Seahawks, but they beat the Titans. They beat the Jaguars. I mean, no surprise, everyone beats the Jaguars. And most recently, they beat the Clippers. Yes, they beat the Clippers. And, still, this is a 4-11 team. They're pretty bad. Their defense sucks, and their offense is very below average. But, there are some positives. And if you want some positives for this Texans team, 2 standout players come out to mind. First of all is the receiver, Brandon Cooks. despite, being traded there against his will, he has been the leading receiver by a long mile, and he's played relatively well despite the terribleness of the rest of the team. He's breaking I guess personal records for him, but not for the team, I guess. And he's doing relatively well, especially for the last player I'm going to mention, rookie 3rd round pick back in April, quarterback from Stanford, Davis Mills. So this is kind of a homecoming for Mr. Mills. He's going to be milling the farm back in Stanford. He saw his first game action when he had to play in relief for the initial starter, Tyrod Taylor. Man, every time Tyrod Taylor starts a game, he immediately gets replaced. So anyway, Tyrod Taylor got injured in week 2 against the Browns, and then initially, Mr. Mills struggled. He struggled with accuracy. He also struggled with a terrible offensive line, and struggled with turnovers. Pretty much typical rookie mistakes. In the first games that he started. He still had some flashes against the one good game he played against the New England Patriots, but still some typical rookie inexperience. But since he took over for Tyrod Taylor again in week 14, after the Seahawks game, he's actually done pretty decently. He's managed to find his receivers better, and he's limited the turnovers a little bit. And even if he does turn the ball over, it's not necessarily his fault. Sometimes they are, though. And the offensive line, has protected him a little better, but not that much better. But, even when he's getting close to getting sacked, he just gets rid of the ball faster, and the receiver managed to find it. But still, again, this team is still pretty bad. But again, Davis Mills and Brandon Cooks are the 2 positives that they can hold on to heading to next year. And again, one of those positives is that week 16 blowout upset over the LA Clippers, 41-29. And this was despite the Texans being more COVID depleted than the Clippers. Yes. Meanwhile, for the 49ers entering this important must-win week 17 game, no matter how much I despise it, they're still in a position to make the playoffs. They're 8-7. They're currently the 6th seed above the Philadelphia Eagles, who are also 8-7. The Niners shot themselves in the foot a little bit on Thursday night last week against the Tennessee Titans because Jimmy Garoppolo failed to lead the offense into taking advantage against a stagnant and stuck Ryan Tannehill-led offense. And Jimmy G couldn't punch in any scoring opportunities after the first touchdown of the game. Jimmy G literally took away one with one interception in the end zone where he just forced it into one of the Titans defenders that was clearly covering George Kittle. And then he threw a couple of near interceptions before throwing another one to open the second half. And he underthrew a wide open Kyle Juszczyk for what could have been another touchdown in all honesty, I talked about this in my Christmas Day episode last week where the Niners could have been up 21-0. It could have been an entirely different game, but Jimmy Garoppolo was just not willing to punch in the opportunities. And his receivers did everything they could. But Jimmy G couldn't do his end. And, the failure on Jimmy G, and I don't want to rag on him too much because of what I'm going to say next, his inefficiency led to the Titans eventually adjusting their game plan, adjusting on offense, and, Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, and they were able to come back in this game, and this turned out to be a big loss for the Niners, and certainly that big loss turns into a little loss later on. But still, this was a very winnable game for San Francisco against a Titans team that has cooled down significantly, and you gave them back the momentum. So despite this loss by San Francisco, this turned out to be a glass half full situation for them because when it comes to their delusional playoff hopes, the Philadelphia Eagles did beat the New York Giants easily. I mean, everyone beats the New York Giants. They the New Orleans Saints, who were COVID depleted, they were starting their 4th round rookie, not Davis Mills, Ian Brook. He looked raw. He looked inexperienced. The Saints went on to lose to the Miami Dolphins 20-3 on Monday Night Football to close out Week 16. So the Niners did get some help, at least, with the Saints losing, and the Saints are a loss away from being eliminated from playoff contention. And the Niners will get a little bit more help if the Packers beat the Minnesota Vikings. So it'll bolster their chances a little bit more. But in essence, the Niners have a little bit more chance to net their postseason, sadly, their spot. If they take care of business at home in their last home game at Levi's for the season, if they beat the Texans and the Saints somehow lose to Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers around that same time on Sunday. I don't know how realistic that'll be, but, anything can happen on any given Sunday. But obviously, the biggest question for the 49ers is not whether or not they can clinch that playoff spot, but it's whether or not who's going to be starting at quarterback. It's going to be interesting. Is it going to be Jimmy Garoppolo? And we all, if you don't follow the Niners news or whatnot, Jimmy Garoppolo suffered a right thumb fracture in his throwing hand, and he injured his thumb, and clearly it could be affecting him. And I know Jimmy G, Kyle Shanahan, is downplaying the situation. They're saying it doesn't require surgery. It's only a mild sprain. There's a chance he could start on Sunday against the Texans. And they can downplay it all they want, but it's not such a wise idea to do so. Just ask Russell Wilson how that's going, how their season turned out when Wilson and the Seahawks decided to rush his ass back out there. So ask Russell Wilson how that went. So it's also worth pointing out that Jimmy G so far, as I'm recording this, he hasn't participated in team practices yet for 2 days straight, Wednesday and Thursday. He hasn't participated in practices so far. Now, if he logs in a Friday practice, whether it be full or limited, it kind of gives him a chance to start this game. But again, I advise against it because it can make his injury worse. But if he doesn't, then it could point to him being out for a must-win game. For as much as I think it's delusional. So that leads us with rookie quarterback Trey Lance. So we already saw Trey Lance start one game back in week 5 because Jimmy Garoppolo was injured in that game with, I think it was an ankle sprain, I believe. So we already saw him start against the Arizona Cardinals in week 5, and it wasn't honestly the greatest start for Trey Lance for his NFL career because, he was doing a lot of designed runs, and he wasn't really throwing the ball. A lot of it had to do with Kyle Shanahan's play calling. And this came against a Arizona Cardinals team was being pretty limited by the Niners defense. The Niners defense was doing a pretty good job in that game. It was just that Kyle Shanahan during that game limited the play calling for Trey Lance. Was it a sign that Kyle Shanahan didn't want to expose his rookie quarterback too much, or was it just Trey Lance was just not ready yet? So Kyle did mention this the past week that Trey Lance since then has improved a lot during practices. So whether or not that translates to the field if he does start on Sunday, we'll see. So for some keys to victory for the Houston Texans, the offensive line, for as bad as it is, they have to protect Davis Mills at all costs. They're going up against perhaps one of the best defensive lines since they faced the Colts in Week 13. You're going up against Nick Bosa, Samson Ebukam, Eric Armstead, Arden Key. So for the Texans offensive line, there are a lot of random guys that honestly, for as much as I see the highlights of the Houston Texans when I do these general NFL recap shows, the Texans O-line is not great. So the Texans have to find a way to protect Davis Mills at all costs. And on the other side, you got to find a way to make Trey Lance uncomfortable. The Texans overall on defense, they're not good either, but they just have to find a way to make Trey Lance and his skin. They have to get under him, whether it be up front with the pass rush or attempting to cover guys, shadow Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, or Brandon Ayuk, or find a way to stuff that running game overall. Speaking of stuffing the running game, that's what you have to do. The Texans still managed to allow Justin Jackson, Austin Eckler's backup, to pretty much run over them in that game in Week 16. So, the Niners are a pretty run-heavy team with Elijah Mitchell, whether he plays in this game, even if he doesn't, they're still pretty run-reliant with Jeff Wilson Jr. and, Deebo Samuel's now involved in the running game. So, the Texans got to find a way to build a wall around this Niners run-oriented attack. Now, for the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, he has to allow Trey Lance to throw the ball. He has to, call some plays for Trey Lance to get his feet wet with passing the ball in regular season action. The reason why the Niners lost this game in Arizona back in Week 5, this was a game the Niners honestly could have pulled off an upset in because, Kyle Shanahan just wouldn't call plays for Trey Lance to actually showcase his arm. So instead of that, Kyle would call plays that would prevent Trey Lance from throwing near 75% of the time. Instead, you would get a lot of designed runs, a lot of quarterback keepers by Trey Lance in that game. So 2 months have passed since that time, and yes, I get it. Kyle doesn't want other teams to get a lot of tape for his pet project in Trey Lance. But at the same time, it's time to see whether or not Trey Lance is the dude heading into next season, when eventually it's going to be just the Trey Lance show and not Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. Then the offense, if Trey Lance starts on Sunday, again, it's not a given at this point, but I'm assuming at this point with Jimmy Garoppolo's status, the offense got to help Trey Lance out. And I mean, it's still the same case with Jimmy Garoppolo. If he trots his outs out there, but the offensive line has to help. Needs to give Trey Lance time to throw, and not go into full Lamar Jackson mode. Kyle Shanahan obviously has to help him out with that too. But the offensive line has to do Trey Lance a lot of favors by giving him time to throw. Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and other guys like Jawan Jennings and Elijah Mitchell, they need to run their routes, get open for Trey Lance to throw to them. And they just got to simply get open. They got to do their jobs. So this has to be a full, concentrated effort by the offense. And last but not least, the secondary. They got to help out the front seven. Last week, the front seven, the defensive line was getting burned to hell late in the game because, the secondary couldn't cover for shit against A.J. Brown. Yes, they were single-handedly getting their ass beat by A.J. Brown. So, Brandon Cooks is going to be Davis Mills' primary target. And whether it's going to be Ambry Thomas or K'Wan Williams or Emmanuel Mosley if he comes back for this game, whoever's going to be covering Brandon Cooks, they have to keep shadowing him. They have to keep on him. They have to be toe for toe, route for route with him. Because if they don't, you're going to get burnt just like you did with A.J. Brown last week. And, the rest of the secondary, especially washed-ass Josh Norman, they need to keep tabs on Mills' other random guys, like Chris Conley, Jordan Atkins, even the running back Rex Burkhead, and Nico Collins. And if they don't do that, the defensive line is going to get burnt out again. And, if the 49ers can't cover, these random guys from the Houston Texans, I don't know what to tell you, man. These corners and safeties, like I said last week, they need a complete overhaul. And if they can't cover even the Texans' random receivers, it's a big indication that, this secondary needs a big, big overhaul. So, what do you guys think will happen in this game between the 49ers and the Houston Texans? Do you think there will be an upset on the horizon like what happened last week? Or do you think the Niners will get the job done? Whether it's with Jimmy starting or with Trey Lance starting. I'm leaning towards Trey Lance starting, considering with the way things are going in practices. So I think the Niners will get it done with Trey Lance, as long as Kyle Shanahan, lets him fly, lets him spread his wings. Even then, so I think the Niners will get this done. Granted, they don't fuck this up. I mean, they can't possibly fuck this up, right? They can't possibly F this up against a pretty bad Texas team. But again, you can never sleep on the terrible teams in the NFL, unless if you're the all elite Jacksonville Jaguars. But that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the first one of the new year. I mean, pretty straightforward, to the point. It's just a little preview episode for this matchup between the 49ers and the Houston Texans. But let me know what you think is going to happen this coming week for the 49ers. But that's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna. Thank you for tuning into this fine episode. Make sure to tune in to Very Cold Lasagna, where it's on YouTube or the other podcast platforms. Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge. Your take on the world of pro wrestling and sports in the fridge, very cold, but also spicy, like Garfield the cat. Anyway, everyone, welcome to the new year. Welcome to 2022. And, well, 2 games left for the 49ers. Let's just hope they don't fuck this one up. Anyway, until next time, peace out.